we repay the debt associated with erasure of Indigenous history by demanding that it be taught in our schools. We pay the debt for cultural degradation intentionally taken place by supporting language revitalization, supporting tribal sovereignty. So we have to name those wounds and then say, okay, how do I, out of the what I have to give, how do I heal that wound?
I think a lot of us, and I'll speak for myself, I feel I've been given so much in so many ways. And when I was reading your writing about the unpaid debt that we have to plants and animals, I thought, I have an unpaid debt. I got to work on that. And then I thought, what about the unpaid debt that I have to the indigenous people of North America? And then
Uh-huh.
I thought, wow. And I felt really kind of heavy and down. And I thought, I have to ask Robin about that and her view of how we balance giving and receiving with Indigenous people today as a contemporary person. How I express my love and gratitude in a way that will pay this debt.
Yeah. How are we in reciprocity with our history? With a history of land taking, right? With a history of erasure, with a history of intentional assimilation and degradation of a culture. And I say those things because we need to name the wound in order to heal it, right? Um, and so, how are we in reciprocity? Let's take one little piece of that. How are we in reciprocity with illegal land taking? How can you ever heal that? Two words: land back. That's how you do it. Say this was unjust. When I look at public lands, all the so-called public lands are Indigenous homelands. They're federal lands, they're state land, they're municipal lands that never belonged to those entities in the first place. They need to be returned. And in some cases, there are ways that people are thinking about land back. Um, in some cases, absolutely direct land return. There are some brilliant, brilliant pieces of work where communities have gotten together, motivated by the very question you're asking, Tammy, and say, how can we give land back? How can we rematriate land? And they're doing it all over the country. In other places, land back or rematriation looks like shared access. When you think about privately conserved lands, land trusts, let's say, or nature reserves, broadly speaking, um, those are, again, Indigenous homelands which are being protected for the citizenry, but Native people, for the most part, cannot go there and pick basket materials or harvest medicines because these are protected lands. A way of healing that wound is to create access for Native peoples to their own original homelands, which are now owned by somebody else who probably doesn't even know or care that they have important traditional medicines on their land or foods. But we can design mechanisms by which we have access um, for people. So those are just two small examples, but there's many more. You know, we repay the debt associated with erasure of Indigenous history by demanding that it be taught in our schools. We pay the debt for cultural degradation intentionally taken place by supporting language revitalization, supporting tribal sovereignty. Um, so we have to name those wounds and then say, okay, how do I, out of the what I have to give, how do I heal that wound?
And just to also track back, in terms of repaying the debt that we feel to the gifting earth, as you called it, to that department,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you were to give anybody some suggestions for when they're in nature, they're on a walk, they're in a park, they're with a tree at the corner of their block, and they want to offer some gesture of reciprocity from their heart or in words, or what might you suggest? Oh, this would be meaningful, Tammy.
Mm. That's a hard question to answer because I'm sorry, as a scientist, my answer is always it depends. It depends.
I think that's a smart answer often
Yeah,
to a lot of these questions.
yeah, it depends. But I mean, one of the first things that you can do is is there trash around that tree? Pick it up. Help in that very simple way. People often think, well, I ought to leave something. And certainly you can leave your gratitude and your good wishes. But you can also think about how can I make this place better? Um, and one of the ways that you can do that in a very direct, immediate, I'm going to pick up this can, right, out of the park or whatever. But I'm also going to be sure that I make a donation to my local land trust. I'm going to be sure that the gifts of having trees in your neighborhood are available to all of us. I'm going to join the tree equity movement to be sure that municipal policies in my city are 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 toward having walkable nature within 10 minutes of every person in the city. You look at the disparities in the tree canopy, for example, between affluent and struggling neighborhoods. You know what that looks like. Where are the tree lined streets? Where are the benefits of nature? We have to plant. We have to plant, and we have to insist on that equity. The question that you're asking kind of moves us toward this new movement that we're trying to create out of as a counter narrative to the words that drill into my soul, which is drill, baby, drill. You know, that notion, that mantra that says, we don't care about the climate. We're going to keep pumping carbon dioxide in anyway. We don't care about the sacredness of Mother Earth. We're going to drill into her anyway. And so the notion is, well, we have to resist that politically, right? We have to resist that economically, but we can also resist it with a counter narrative that says, no, I'm not a drill baby drill person. I'm a plant baby plant person, meaning that here we are in this climate crisis. Who knows what to do about carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? First of all, we don't add any more, right? And plants, with every breath that they take, they are turning carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere into soil, into leaves, into birds, into berries. So, plant baby plant is to say, let's do that. Collectively, let's do that. This is something that you and I can do. I am not going to be able to, stop drilling in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. I can write all the letters I want. I can't do that, but I can plant as many trees as I can, encourage my neighbors to do that. I can create pollinator gardens. I can ally myself with plants who will do the work of these nature based climate solutions. Um, from the tiniest micro action in your own yard to parks, to public lands, to landscape scale work. And that is something that it feels like in this moment of the great turning, we are called to do, which not only, to me, it is, I guess, to come full circle in our discussion today, it is restoration. It's healing the land, but it's also restoration. To say, no, we are going to embrace the story that we human people are givers to nature. We can plant. We are not just takers. And you don't just say that, you do it. And you do it with your neighbors. And that's what Plant Baby Plant is meant to do, is to be a call to that action and support for both healing the earth and healing our relationship to earth.
I was looking